I was half reclining on the lounge chair in the courtyard. My face looked uncontrollably pale. I was dozing off, unaware of when the small yard outside had filled with parked cars. After a burst of hurried footsteps, there came the rustling sound of voices. "Derek, look at how terrible the environment is here. Celeste must have had a really hard year. It's all my fault, we should have come to pick up little sister Celeste much earlier. Now I just hope she doesn't hold a grudge against me. Ivy, I think you're just too kind-hearted. Bringing Celeste here was a punishment, not a vacation. Why would she need such a nice environment? And if it weren't for you pleading for her all this time, always nagging about bringing her back, I would have already left her here for 3 years." Listening to their every word, I didn't even need to guess. In an instant, I knew exactly who had come. A year ago, because I accidentally broke the clay doll Ivy had made for Derek, Derek heartlessly abandoned me at the old countryside house. I remember it was late at night. The old house, having been uninhabited for a long time, felt somewhat eerie and terrifying. I cried, clutching Derek's sleeve, begging him not to leave me here alone. But because of a single sentence from Ivy, he coldly shook off my hand, his eyes full of disdain. "Celeste, this is your punishment. If you don't learn your lesson the hard way, you'll never realize your mistakes." That night, I curled up in the dark old house, enduring the hardest night. Ivy's words kept echoing in my mind. "Derek, that little clay doll was something I made with great care. So, I, the fiancé who had been engaged to him for nearly 7 years, was worth less in his eyes than a clay doll Ivy casually molded." Once again, memories from a year ago surged up. A vast unwillingness roared relentlessly within my heart. Before long, the sunlight in front of me was obscured by a shadow. Derek's cold, merciless voice echoed in my ears once more. "Celeste, it's time to get up. Considering how well you've done this past year, I'm here to take you home." I slowly opened my eyes. Frowning, I stared at Derek for a long time, questioning him. "Home? What home? And who is this gentleman beside you?" Derek furrowed his brows, looking at me deeply. A flicker of nervousness passed through his eyes, and his voice instinctively rose a few tones. "Celeste, what nonsense are you talking? I'm Derek, your fiancé." I sneered twice. "You're my fiancé, so why did you leave me in this rural little town?" Derek was immediately at a loss for words. In the end, with a dark face and an impatient tone, he said, "Celeste, don't play dumb with me. I'm here to take you home now." Hearing him say he was taking me home again, a wave of sorrow welled up uncontrollably in my heart. So he still remembered he was my fiancé. Yet he had abandoned me in this old house in the mountain village for a whole year without a word. Spending every day mingling with Ivy, to the point that anyone who didn't know would think they were the real couple. I had quarreled and fought with him over this before. But Derek still did whatever he pleased, ignoring all my feelings. That day, when I accidentally broke the clay doll Ivy had made for him, it sparked a huge fight between us. We had agreed on the day to go get our marriage certificate, but he actually abandoned me alone at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Just because Ivy called and said she wanted to eat xiaolongbao from Nanching, he left without hesitation. He didn't even have time to get the certificate. I waited for him at the Civil Affairs Bureau, waiting until the staff kicked me out. Stumbling home in a daze, I watched him and Ivy intimately feeding each other xiaolongbao, mouthful by mouthful. At first, he looked at me with a hint of guilt. But then Ivy casually said, "The Civil Affairs Bureau is right there, it's not going anywhere. Celeste is so anxious, maybe she's hiding something." Derek immediately seemed to have found an excuse. He looked at me with righteous indignation, every word an outburst of his dissatisfaction. "Celeste, you're not young anymore, you should know some things can't be rushed. You need to learn to be sensible. I'm busy all the time, unlike you, who has nothing to do every day." At that moment, I retorted sarcastically, "Being busy just means going to buy xiaolongbao for Ivy?" That sentence instantly ignited Derek's fuse. Before I could even react, a slap landed across my face. The sharp sound echoed. My right cheek burned with a fierce sting. Unable to hold back, I stepped back a few paces, my left hand accidentally hitting the shoe cabinet, knocking over Ivy's clay doll, which shattered into pieces on the floor. I had tried to explain. But with my face swollen and red, no matter how much I pleaded, Derek refused to believe me. He always thought I did it on purpose. Just to get back at him for that slap. Thinking back now, it's simply a joke. I was clearly the one who got hurt, yet in his eyes, I was the one causing harm. I calmly leaned back in the recliner, not responding to Derek's words. He took a quick step forward, gripping my arm tightly, his face twisted with rage. "Celeste, I'm talking to you, can't you hear me?" Beside him, Ivy was sniffling and whining. "Derek, I think Celeste must be holding a grudge against me, that's why she's pretending not to know you." "Celeste, isn't it enough that I'm here apologizing to you?" She bent down as if to apologize. But the next moment, Derek's eyes turned red with anger, and he quickly reached out to steady Ivy, stopping her from bending further. "Ivy, your back isn't healed yet, don't hurt it again." Then she turned her head, her eyes glaring at me fiercely. Her hand kept pressing hard. "Celeste, are you going to say something or not? Hurry up and explain to Ivy." But I remained indifferent, biting back the pain in my arm and letting out a cold laugh. Ivy looked at me with resentment, her waist bent halfway. Seeing that I still wouldn't speak, she could only awkwardly stay bent over like that. Tears instantly streamed down her cheeks. "Derek, just leave me alone. Celeste holds a grudge against me. If I don't apologize, she won't go back. I've taken care of you all year without any recognition or status, yet Celeste still treats me like the villain." Hearing this, Derek clenched his teeth in pain. He glared at me with a violent look. Without any hesitation, he yanked me off the lounge chair onto the floor. "Celeste, you really are a jealous woman. If it weren't for Ivy helping take care of me this past year, do you think I'd be this healthy now? You're not grateful, and on top of that, you want to hold a grudge against her." I looked at Derek with mockery. What a huge joke. He was the one who left me at the old countryside house, and now he blames me for not taking care of him for a whole year. He spent a sweet year with Ivy, and wasn't he so happy he almost forgot I was his fiancée? Now he remembers and uses that as an excuse to blame me. On what grounds exactly? Derek saw the resentment in my eyes. He looked at me, furious and embarrassed, his gaze flickering away. "Celeste, what kind of look is that?" With a sharp crack, I finally couldn't help but let out a whimper from the pain. Seeing me trembling all over, my face contorted in discomfort, already pale, now drained of all color. At this moment, Derek finally came to his senses, anxiously stepping forward to help me up. "Celeste, what's wrong?" I never expected you to become so weak." Hearing his feigned concern, I didn't feel sadness for a moment, instead, a faint sense of absurdity washed over me. All of this was caused by his own hands, so what was this act of deep affection now? Derek tried to lift me up. "Celeste, hold on, I'll take you home right away and have a doctor check you out." But I suddenly shook off his hand, mustering all my strength to slowly stand up from the ground. Leaning against the chair behind me, I fought back the tears that had long filled my eyes and spoke with a resigned heart. "No, I'm not going back with you. This is my home. Now please leave immediately, or I'll call the police." Derek froze for a moment at the cold expression on my face, unusually flustered. Just as he frowned, about to speak, Ivy stepped in ahead of him. She looked at me with tear-streaked cheeks, her eyes full of sorrow. In a corner where only the two of us could see, a cruel smile spread across her face. "Celeste, I think you're just pretending to be this weak. Didn't you push Derek away with quite some strength just now?" As she spoke, she repeated her old trick. Clinging to Derek's arm, she put on a pitiful look. "I think Celeste is just unhappy with me and wants to deliberately make things difficult. But it's okay. If this back injury flares up again, you'll have to help me bathe and wipe down every day." Hearing those words, and seeing Ivy's shy face, even though I knew she was deliberately provoking me, it still stirred every emotion deep inside me. Derek hurriedly wrapped his arms around her indulgently, his hands gently supporting her waist. Don't push yourself. If your back injury flares up again, you'll have to stay in bed and rest. At that moment, the fierce look he had when facing me was nowhere to be seen. His eyes were filled entirely with tender affection for Ivy. Seeing this, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ivy glanced at me triumphantly, then leaned weakly into his embrace. But I'm not apologizing. What if Celeste doesn't come home? Derek looked up, our eyes meeting in midair. Instinctively, I stepped back from Ivy again. Then, with a look of disappointment, he turned to me, his eyes cold and merciless. Celeste, you lying to me would be one thing, but why do you have to torment Ivy? Just seeing my pale face, covered in wounds, his voice softened, suppressing his anger. I'll ask you one last time, are you coming home with me or not? Looking at Derek, I was already holding back my fury to the extreme. Suddenly, I spread my hands and smiled at him. I'm really sorry, Mr. Derek. I've told you, my home is here. You haven't come for a year, and not only have I gotten married, but I've even had a child. How could I go back with you? Do you really expect me to abandon my husband and child just because of you? After speaking, I suddenly remembered that my husband and son would be back soon. So I turned and went inside to prepare the milk powder. Derek's eyes were already red without me noticing. Ignoring Ivy's calls behind him, he followed me straight into the house. Frustrated, he grabbed my hand roughly, threw me onto the sofa, and the anger on his face finally erupted uncontrollably. Celeste, how long do you plan to keep playing me like this? And you talk about marriage and having children? Even if you're just messing around, there has to be a limit. Do you believe I'll really leave you here and never care about you again? I didn't say a word. Derek's face showed a flicker of unease, he wanted to step forward but stopped himself. After a long silence, carefully choosing his words, he finally spoke again. Celeste, you clearly weren't this petty before. Why have you become like this now? He shook his head, as if I had committed some terrible crime. I know you don't like Ivy, maybe even hate her, but you have to understand that during the year you were gone, it was Ivy who took care of me. You don't need to hold any grudges against Ivy. She and I are just simple friends. You're my fiancé, and we're the ones who are supposed to get married in the end. So Derek had always known I didn't like Ivy. Yet every time, he tormented me and humiliated me for Ivy's sake. Maybe he didn't even realize it himself. Now, every word he says is to defend this so-called friend, Ivy. Believe it? How could I not? Haven't you already left me here for a whole year? But Derek, I, Celeste, am a selfish, petty person. If someone treats me badly, I'll remember it for a lifetime. No sooner had she finished speaking than he could no longer hold back. He grabbed the glass on the table and hurled it violently against the door behind me. Celeste, are you ever going to stop? Shards of glass splattered all over me. A sharp scream rang out from outside the door. Who's there? Derek turned around impatiently. Ivy stepped in. Derek, I've been watching for a long time and you still haven't come out. I was afraid something had happened to you. His tightly furrowed brows instantly relaxed. But the air in the room seemed to freeze, suddenly falling into complete silence. After a while, Ivy looked at me with a resentful glance, head bowed, and said dejectedly, Derek, I'm going back first. Since Celeste can't stand me, I'll pack my things and leave when I get home. Finally, Derek's long-suppressed temper erupted like a volcano. Ignoring my weak state, he fiercely grabbed my arm and dragged me outside. I swung my hand and slapped him across the face. Derek froze instantly, staring at me in disbelief. Celeste, you actually hit me? From childhood to now, in his eyes, I have always been someone who cared for him deeply. But this time, unable to hold back my anger, I slapped him again. Derek, are you awake yet? I told you, I'm already married and have a child. My home is here, so please don't come and disturb my life. Hearing this, Derek sneered. How many times are you going to keep repeating that lie? Married with a child? Besides me, who else would marry you and have children with you? At that moment, the sounds of my husband and child cooing came from outside the door. Honey, I'm home. I saw Alex push open the door holding the child. Derek's face showed a mix of terror and panic, his trembling thin lips asking me, Celeste, who are all these people? Why do they call you their wife? I ignored Derek and stepped forward to take the child from Alex's arms. The moment I held the child, the pain in my body seemed to vanish. Yet, Alex still noticed the scars all over me. His face immediately darkened, and with a cold, harsh tone he asked, Wife, why are so many people in the house? And are these wounds on you all caused by them? As he spoke, Alex's icy gaze shifted toward Ivy and Derek. It was the first time I had ever seen his face so cold and unforgiving. I met Alex on a night a year ago. It was the day after Derek had left me at the old house. I tried to walk back to town but accidentally got lost in the mountains. Then a heavy rain started. I slipped and tumbled down the mountain, hitting a tree and losing consciousness. When I woke up, I was lying inside a small tent. Alex was sitting in one corner, curled up, with the blanket completely covering me. He was the one who saved me. He said he happened to be camping and exploring in the mountains and didn't expect to find me unconscious under a tree, so he rescued me. Later, I invited him back to the old house. Having someone with me eased my fears, and I settled in there peacefully. Alex seemed to come to this mountain area often for adventures. Every time he came, I would let him stay at the old house. Over time, through these visits, a special bond grew between us. I no longer thought about leaving. As for my feelings for Derek, I learned to let go. After 2 months of being together, during a hike to watch the sunrise with Alex, he proposed to me. I thought it over for a long time, but in the end, I agreed. There was no grand wedding, and not many people knew. But I knew Alex truly loved me. Feeling his concerned gaze sweeping over me repeatedly, it finally lingered for a long moment on the bright red wound on my back. I smiled at him. All right, there are others around, we'll talk about this later. But when I brushed it off, Derek, unwilling to let it go, rushed forward. His eyes red, veins bulging on his forehead, he grabbed my hands and demanded, Celeste, tell me, who is he? And whose child is this, really? I had just furrowed my brows when Alex suddenly pushed Derek away. He wasn't stupid, having heard my story, he naturally guessed who Derek was. Seeing the injuries all over me, he looked at him coldly, his tone unfriendly. Mr. Derek, right? I'm Celeste's husband, and this is our child. I wonder if you're clear on that now. Hearing Alex say this, Derek was naturally unable to accept it. His face twisted into a grimace, eyes wide with fury. Impossible. Celeste is my fiancée. The only person she loves is me. How could she marry you? But Alex's simple words left Derek stunned in place. If you know Celeste loves you so much, then how did you treat her? How could he do that to her? Derek seemed completely dazed. He kept recalling how he had constantly looked down on me for Ivy's sake. He even threw me out to this remote, run-down old house just because of a clay doll. His mind seemed to have taken a heavy blow. Gritting his teeth, his eyes bloodshot. This is between Celeste and me, what's it got to do with you? Whatever happens between us, I'll give Celeste an explanation myself. Alex sneered, then suddenly wrapped his arm around my waist. Now that I'm Celeste's husband, her matters are my matters. I wasn't around before, but today, I won't let you get away with what you've done to Celeste. Alex's hand kept wandering mischievously over my waist, making me a little ticklish. I let out a soft hum and shot him a playful glare. This scene instantly provoked Derek. His chest heaved up and down as he glared at me in fury. At that moment, Ivy appeared from behind and grabbed Derek, her eyes sparkling with excitement that she couldn't hide. Derek, since Celeste has already married and had children, we shouldn't disturb her life anymore. Unfortunately, it was better left unsaid. The moment those words were spoken, Derek went wild like a raging bull, shaking off Ivy's hand and charging straight at Alex, throwing a punch at him. I was pushed aside and stood not far away. The two of them started wrestling. Ivy anxiously tried to intervene, but couldn't stop them. So she could only ask me to try to calm them down. Celeste, why don't you hurry and break them up? What if someone gets hurt by accident? I said nothing. Calmly holding the child, I looked down and played with him. Derek, who sits in the office all day, could hardly be the kind to often climb up and challenge Alex. In just a few moves, he was knocked down to the ground by Alex. It wasn't until I saw Derek trembling and unable to stand steadily that I casually spoke up. I've already told you before, and now the facts are right in front of you. Derek, please don't come here anymore. I don't want my life to be disturbed by you. After saying this, I hugged the child and went back to the bedroom. Derek watched my retreating figure, his eyes vacant. Resentful, yet helpless. In the end, he was kicked out by Alex. Late at night, I lay on the bed in the bedroom. Alex was wiping the wounds on my back with alcohol. The man who had just shown his strength earlier that day was wiping the wounds while tears quietly fell from his eyes. It's all my fault for insisting on taking our son out to play. If I had stayed home, honey, you wouldn't have gotten hurt. I gave him a speechless glance. I was the one who asked you to take our son out, so are you saying you're blaming me? Alex immediately put on a pained expression and protested. That's not true, Celeste, you can't wrong me like that. It's because I care about you. Your previous injury hadn't healed yet, and now because of that Derek, you're hurt all over again. It was during that heavy rain a year ago. I rolled down the mountain and injured myself, and I never fully recovered. Later, even though Alex took care of me every day during my pregnancy, I still kept coughing and wheezing for more than half a year. 3 months ago, I was hospitalized again due to a high fever. At just over 8 months, my son was born prematurely. He almost didn't make it safely off the operating table. Thinking of these things, I turned around and smiled as I wiped away the tears from Alex's eyes. Then, holding my son, I said to him, "It's been a long time since we went camping. How about we go camping in the back mountain tomorrow?" Alex hesitated a little. But in the end, he couldn't refuse me. Early the next morning, Alex had prepared a lot of gear and carried a big backpack. I held my son and stepped out the door. Unexpectedly, just as we stepped out, a familiar voice sounded behind us. Derek was sitting on the steps outside the yard. After seeing me, he quickly brushed the dust off his clothes and stood up, walking over to me. I frowned, a hint of impatience in my voice. Judging by Derek's appearance, he had clearly been standing guard outside all night. His hair was tousled by the wind, and the corners of his eyes were still bloodshot. His coat was damp with dew, soaked more than halfway through. I already made myself clear yesterday. I don't understand why you're still looking for me. Derek gave a bitter smile and shook his head. His eyes looked at me with deep affection. Celeste, we have a betrothal between us. No matter what happens, we should discuss things properly. You don't need to do something like this with an outsider just to upset me. He paused for a moment before continuing. But I admit, you did make me angry. Celeste, come home with me. From now on, I promise I'll treat you well. Hearing this, I couldn't help but sneer, teasing him. Getting mad over something like this? Derek, do you really think the whole world has to revolve around you? Do you honestly believe no one else would want to marry me besides you? Just one sentence made Derek's face turn extremely ugly. He opened his mouth but couldn't utter a single word. Since he had already leaned in close, I didn't let him off. I have a husband and a child now, so what do I need you for? To make me angry every day? Or to force me to watch you and Ivy being all ambiguous and cozy every single day? Derek pressed his lips tightly, his face pale as death. He looked at me in disbelief, his eyes instantly reddening. Celeste, believe me, Ivy and I are really just ordinary friends. And, I thought it through all night and finally understood. Even if you have a child, it doesn't matter. I will treat the child as if they were my own. If you still don't believe me, I'll go to the hospital and get a vasectomy. From then on, we'll treat this child as our one and only treasure. For a moment, I stared at Derek as if he were insane. I never expected him to say something so crazy. But the next second, Alex suddenly pushed him away. My son has his real father. He doesn't need a second one. And don't keep thinking about my wife, be careful, or I might just have my eye on you, and you'll be bedridden for half a month. Watching Alex fiercely protect his wife, I smiled quietly. Derek's face turned ashen, and he stood there stiffly. Alex and I ignored him and turned to head to the back mountain for camping. Arriving at the back mountain, the son in my arms seemed to sense that we were going on an outing and kept babbling nonstop. Soon, the sky grew dim. Alex had also found a campsite and set up the tent. At night, a light rain began to fall sparsely from the sky. Alex and I were sound asleep in the tent when suddenly shouting came from outside. Before long, the voices grew clearer. Without even needing to identify them, I knew Derek had come looking for us. I told Alex to stay in the tent with the child, then grabbed an umbrella and went out. Derek, can you stop bothering me? I've already hidden away in the mountains, and you still won't leave me alone? He was wearing a raincoat, holding a flashlight in his hand. When he saw me, an uncontrollable look of joy spread across his face. But after hearing my words, he muttered for a long time without saying a single word. Finally, he slumped his shoulders and said pitifully, "Celeste, I'm just afraid something might happen to you. It's really unsafe in the mountains at night. And the rain is getting heavier and heavier. There are often mudslides and landslides in the mountains, it's very dangerous. Can we go back?" For a moment, I didn't know how to describe the feeling deep inside me. The kind of concern I never even imagined before was now absurdly appearing. Derek, now you suddenly know how to care about me? But what about a year ago? A year ago, when I was crying and begging, holding on to your hand, unwilling to let go, begging you to take me away from here, what did you say? Hearing my accusation, the fear in Derek's eyes slowly spread. A startling clap of thunder lit up his pale, bloodless face. He didn't dare answer, so I spoke for him. You didn't hesitate to break free from my hand and said I deserved it. Because of a clay doll, you just left me alone in the old house for a whole year, ignoring me completely. Now you say you care about me? You should be worried about whether I'm dead or alive. I questioned him hysterically, unleashing all the grievances I had bottled up inside over the past year. After a long while, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. When I opened them again, the look I gave him was completely devoid of any emotion. Now I have my own family, a husband who cares for me, and children to keep me company. I'm no longer afraid of the dark. Derek, you will never be important to me again. That last sentence was like a knife, piercing deeply into his heart. His pupils suddenly contracted sharply, and the flashlight in his hand fell to the ground, powerless. He cried out with a heart-wrenching roar. Impossible, Celeste, we've been childhood sweethearts. In your heart, I've always been the most important person. I know you must still be angry. Angry that I didn't come to see you all year, and that I'm too close to Ivy, right? As soon as I get back, I'll kick her out, okay? At that, Derek rushed forward, trying to grasp my hand. But when I dodged, he seemed to shatter completely, the light in his eyes dimming as if fading away. I hadn't said a word yet. Out of nowhere, Ivy appeared, tearful and clinging to Derek. She looked anxious and flustered as she said, "Derek, how can you do this? You've already seen my body, and you still want to drive me away?" Hearing this, Derek's face flushed red with anger. Furious and humiliated, he slapped Ivy down to the ground. Pointing at her, he cursed harshly, "What nonsense are you spouting? I have a fiancé. Can you at least have some sense of boundaries as a woman? I've already told you, you're nothing more than a nanny replacing Celeste to take care of me. You, a mere nanny, actually dare to dream of marrying me?" Being scolded like this by Derek, Ivy's expression flickered wildly, her emotions fluctuating intensely, her chest rising and falling. Finally, she laughed maniacally, pointing at Derek. "Boundaries? Derek, your idea of boundaries is bathing me and wiping me down? And now you're pretending to be a gentleman, talking to me about boundaries? Do you even deserve that? Have you forgotten how, a year ago, you tormented Celeste because of me? Now you see Celeste getting married, and suddenly you regret it? Pointed at and cursed by Ivy, Derek's face shifted from pale to flushed. He could never have imagined that the usually gentle Ivy had such a wild side. Derek, snap out of it. A scumbag like you still dares to hope Celeste will abandon her husband and child to come back to you? That sentence was like the final straw that broke the camel's back. I heard Derek let out a furious roar and immediately grabbed Ivy by the neck. It's all your fault. If you hadn't deliberately incited me to torment Celeste, how could I have done such a thing? Just as Ivy was about to lose consciousness, Derek finally released his grip. I had already returned to the tent long ago, leaving them to tear each other apart. No matter how much they fought, it was none of my concern. It rained all night that night. When I stepped out of the tent in the morning, the ground was soaked. Every step sank into thick, sloppy mud. I had lost all desire to continue camping and prepared to leave with Alex. Not far from there, about 100 meters away, I saw Derek slumped under a large tree. He was soaked through, weakly leaning against the trunk, clearly having been rained on all night. He looked at me pitifully, trying to win my sympathy. But I just gave him a cold glance. I frowned slightly, took Alex's hand, and walked toward the mountain's edge. No extra expression, no unnecessary words. Not long after I left, faint, broken sobs came from behind me, filled with sorrow. But I didn't even look back, I kept walking until I disappeared from Derek's sight. After that day, it seemed Derek truly gave up. Knowing I wouldn't forgive him, he never appeared around the old house again to disturb my life. Just as life was settling into a steady rhythm, about a week later, Derek's parents suddenly came to the old house to find me. Celeste, considering the long-standing friendship between our families, please try to persuade Derek to undergo the surgery. We know Derek has wronged you, but we hope you can do this for the sake of us old folks and see him. It was through their explanation that I learned Derek had fallen seriously ill after getting caught in the rain that day. He refused the surgery and spent his days lying in bed in a daze, even falling into the habit of heavy drinking. Unable to resist his parents' pleas, I decided to go. When I saw Derek again, he was nothing but skin and bones. So weak he couldn't even sit up, barely able to lean against the hospital bed. The moment I appeared, his eyes seemed to light up. But the glow quickly faded. Celeste, why are you here? He raised his hand, trying to cover his face. I must look awful like this, right? You used to say I was the most handsome, but now I don't even dare to face you. I gave him a cold glance. Though it was pitiful, I felt nothing inside. If it weren't for the fact that my uncle and aunt had treated me well before, I wouldn't have shown up here today at all. Like completing a task, I spoke bluntly. Your parents found me and asked me to come. Derek, even if you're dead now, don't think I'll shed a single tear for you. You've already let me down. If you want to let down more people, then just keep waiting to die. After saying this last sentence, I turned and walked away. Seeing Alex holding the child outside the hospital waiting for me, all the anger I had just felt instantly calmed. Looking at the child's little face, slightly red from the sun, I couldn't help but feel a pang of worry. How could you take the child out in the sun like this? Aren't you afraid of sunburn? Alex handed the child into my arms and then smiled. The hospital said that more sun is good for health. With our child's skin, there's no way it would get sunburned so easily. We left, playfully teasing each other. Behind me, a burning gaze fixed on my back, lingering for a long time. I had always known about it, but never paid it any mind. Later, Alex held a grand wedding ceremony for me. Our 3-year-old son attended as the ring bearer. The moment he handed me the red ring box, I felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. The happiness I once longed for was right in my hands. In the corner of the banquet, sat a frail man. He stared blankly at my figure, his face showing an expression that was half tearful, half smiling. Not long after, he left after presenting a lavish gift. Since that day, Derek disappeared from my life. I heard he went abroad, busy all day handling company affairs. As for me, I was busy raising my son. One must never be a man who betrays true feelings.